Chapter 2, Part 3, The Hall of Memory. The chamber seemed to breathe, not with air, with time. The storyteller stood beneath a ceiling so high it vanished into darkness, where thousands upon thousands of crystalline spheres drifted in slow, silent circles. Some glowed with brilliant gold, others shimmered with deep sapphire light, while a few remained dark, waiting for hands that might never come again. No books lined the walls. No shelves, no scrolls, only living memories. He lowered his voice instinctively. I've never seen anything like this. Lyra smiled, though there was sadness in her eyes. Neither has anyone born in this age. She stepped toward a crystal no larger than a lantern. As her fingertips brushed its surface, the sphere brightened, filling the chamber with warm light. It is said that stone remembers pressure. She glanced back at him. And crystal remembers truth. The sphere floated from its place and settled gently between them. History written on paper can burn. History carved into monuments can be shattered. But a memory, she rested her hand against the crystal, remains exactly as it was lived. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the floor beneath the storyteller disappeared. He did not fall. Instead, the hall dissolved into sunlight. He found himself standing in the middle of an enormous market square. Children darted between colorful stalls while musicians played cheerful melodies on instruments unlike any he had seen before. Merchants laughed as they bargained with travelers whose clothing reflected cultures from every corner of a world far larger than the maps he knew. High above, graceful winged creatures glided between gleaming towers. Dragons, not roaring, not hunting, simply soaring through a clear blue sky as naturally as birds. A little girl pointed upward with delight. Look, her father laughed. I've seen dragons every day of my life. But this one wave, the dragon banked gently, dipping one great wing toward the child before disappearing among the towers. The storyteller forgot to breathe. There was no fear here, no war, no suspicion, only life. Lyra's voice reached him as though carried on a distant breeze. This was Asterion. He turned slowly, taking in streets paved with white stone, flowering trees lining every avenue, fountains whose waters sparkled with faint threads of light. It wasn't a legend, he whispered. No, it was home. The vision drifted onward. An elderly woman handed fresh bread to a young soldier. Two scholars argued cheerfully over a star chart. A blacksmith paused his work to help a child retrieve a toy that had rolled beneath his forge. No one hurried. No one expected the end of the world. The storyteller's chest tightened. They had no idea. Lyra lowered her gaze. Not yet. The laughter faded. The sunlight dimmed. The market remained frozen for a heartbeat, every smile suspended in time. Then the memory unraveled into countless threads of light that drifted upward like fireflies. The hall returned. Silence settled once more. The crystal slowly floated back to its place among the thousands above. The storyteller wiped at his eyes before he realized tears had formed. I only saw a few minutes. Lyra nodded. Sometimes a single, ordinary morning tells more truth than 100 stories about kings. He looked up at the endless sea of memories overhead. How many lives are preserved here? Kalen, who had quietly entered the chamber, answered in his deep, steady voice. We no longer count memories. The storyteller looked toward him. We count the ones we haven't lost. No one spoke after that. The hall itself seemed to hold the silence, preserving it alongside every triumph, every farewell, and every forgotten sunrise that had shaped the world before the Great War. Chapter 2, Part 4, The Keeper's Burden. The doors of the Hall of Memory closed behind them with a deep, resonant groan that echoed through the sanctuary like the final note of an ancient hymn. For several long moments, neither Lyra nor the storyteller spoke. The weight of countless lives, victories, betrayals, and sacrifices still lingered in the air behind them. The storyteller glanced over his shoulder once, half expecting the great chamber to vanish like a dream. Instead, the towering crystal doors remained exactly where they had always been, silent sentinels guarding the memories of a forgotten age. Lyra continued down a broad marble staircase that descended into an open courtyard bathed in the pale light of the divided sky. The storyteller followed. The sanctuary spread before him like a living city carved from both mountain and memory. At first glance, it possessed an almost heavenly beauty, but as they descended farther, he realized beauty had never been its purpose. Everything here lived with intention. A group of young apprentices sparred beneath towering crystal arches, their practice blades fashioned from translucent stone that sang softly each time they collided. Their instructors corrected every movement with patient precision, teaching balance before strength, discipline before victory. Nearby, elderly scholars worked over fractured stone tablets recovered from forgotten ruins. Tiny crystal instruments floated above the weathered inscriptions, restoring broken symbols one fragment at a time, while scribes carefully copied every recovered word into fresh crystal slates. Beyond them, engineers surrounded a massive Heartstone engine whose bronze gears had long ago fused with veins of luminous crystal. Sparks leapt between ancient mechanisms as careful hands coaxed dormant machinery back toward life. Children laughed as they practiced with wooden swords beneath the watchful eyes of gray-haired veterans whose faces bore scars earned centuries before. Not one voice was raised in idleness. Not one soul wandered aimlessly. Every movement served something greater. The storyteller slowed. They all know exactly why they're here. Lyra smiled without looking back. They do. He watched a blacksmith shaping a strange alloy that shimmered between steel and crystal. No markets, no nobles, no servants. No one simply exists. She stopped beside a stone balcony overlooking the entire sanctuary. Far below, countless lights glimmered among bridges and towers as if stars themselves had descended into the mountain. Every watcher carries two duties. The storyteller folded his arms. What are they? Her eyes remained fixed upon the sanctuary. Protect the future. The words settled over the courtyard. After a long pause, she spoke again, quieter this time. And remember the past. They continued deeper into the mountain until the corridors opened into a chamber unlike any library the storyteller had imagined. There were no shelves lined with books, no scrolls, no parchment. Instead, thousands upon thousands of crystal pillars rose from the polished floor, each one glowing with its own unique color. Some shimmered sapphire blue, others glowed emerald, amber, violet, silver, or deep crimson. Soft currents of light flowed through them like living rivers. The entire chamber hummed with quiet intelligence. "What is this place?" the storyteller whispered. "The living archive." Lyra walked between the towering crystals with unmistakable reverence. Every crystal remembers. She rested a hand against one glowing green pillar. Languages that vanished before kingdoms were born. She pointed toward another whose light flickered gold. Engineering that raised cities no longer standing. A crystal of soft blue. The healing arts before disease changed. Another, wrapped in swirling silver light. The old roads and every path that once crossed the world. Then a crimson crystal whose light pulsed like a heartbeat. Dragon lore. Finally, at the center of the chamber, stood a pillar unlike the others. It radiated white light that seemed almost alive. The songs. The songs? The voices that awaken heartstones. The storyteller stepped closer, captivated. The crystal's surface reflected not his face, but shifting images of mountains, rivers, stars, and flames. Without thinking, he reached toward it. Lyra caught his wrist before his fingers touched the crystal. Not harshly, simply enough to stop him. He looked at her in surprise. "I only wanted to see." Her expression remained gentle. "I know." She released him slowly. "Knowledge isn't taken." Her eyes drifted toward the endless forest of crystal pillars surrounding them. "It's entrusted." The storyteller lowered his hand. For the first time, he understood. This was not merely information. It was inheritance. Far above the living archive, hidden behind doors no apprentice was permitted to enter, another chamber waited in silence. The keeper entered alone. Unlike every other room within the sanctuary, this one possessed no grandeur. There was no throne, no banners, no monument celebrating forgotten victories. Only a sturdy wooden table worn smooth by thousands of years of use. A single chair, shelves, thousands upon thousands of journals lined every wall from floor to ceiling. Leather bindings faded by age, others nearly new, some cracked with centuries. Others still carried the scent of fresh ink. The keeper closed the door behind him. For several moments, he simply stood among them. His fingers brushed familiar spines as one might greet lifelong friends. Or mourn them. He selected a volume from the highest shelf. Its cover bore simple lettering. Year 9842 after the Great War. Another. Year 9921. He returned them carefully before removing the newest journal. Its pages were nearly empty. Only today's date rested upon the first unwritten page. The keeper sat. He dipped an old steel pen into black ink. His handwriting remained steady despite the burden carried within it. He wrote, "The divided sky has returned." The scratching of the pen echoed through the quiet room. His hand stopped. The silence grew heavier. Then, with visible hesitation, he continued, "I fear the world is running out of time." He stared at the words long after the ink had dried. Not because he questioned them, because he feared one day he would forget why he had written them. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." Lyra stepped quietly inside. She immediately noticed the older journals resting open upon the desk. "You were searching again?" The keeper nodded. "I was." She approached slowly. "Did you find what you needed?" He rested one weathered hand upon an open page. His eyes remained fixed upon words written centuries earlier. "I found the page." A faint smile touched his lips, one filled more with sorrow than relief. "I no longer remember writing it." Lyra lowered her gaze. There was nothing to say. She had watched it happen for centuries. The keeper remembered the Great War. Every battle, every sacrifice, every face that had fallen before the Hollow King. Those memories remained etched into his soul as though carved from stone. But the centuries that followed, they slipped away one season at a time. Entire decades dissolved into mist. Names disappeared. Conversations faded. Victories blurred. Without these journals, pieces of himself would simply vanish. The oldest man in the world had become the keeper not only of history, but of his own. Elsewhere within the sanctuary, Kalen guided the storyteller into a vast circular chamber dominated by an enormous relief map carved directly into the floor. Except, it wasn't carved. The mountains shifted almost imperceptibly. Clouds drifted above tiny forests. Rivers flowed. Waves crashed silently against miniature coastlines. Heartstones pulsed beneath the earth like glowing veins beneath living skin. The storyteller knelt beside it. "It's moving." "It always has," Kalen answered. "The world changes. So must the map." As they watched, faint points of golden light shimmered across the continent. Cities, sanctuaries, beacon towers. Then, one light flickered. Its gold faded into crimson. The storyteller frowned. "What happened?" Before Kalen could answer, another crimson point appeared. Then another. Then 5 more. They spread beneath a region marked by towering black mountains. The crown of ash. Kalen's expression hardened. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "They're spreading faster than our records predicted." The crimson lights pulsed once, twice, then began creeping outward beneath the stone like blood spreading through cracked marble. The seals were weakening. The great chamber doors burst open. A watcher stumbled inside, breathless from running. His armor bore fresh dust from the upper beacon towers. "My lord!" The keeper rose immediately. "What is it?" The watcher struggled to catch his breath. "One of the oldest beacon stones." His voice trembled. "It answered your summons." Lyra's eyes widened. "Which beacon?" The watcher swallowed hard. "The Eastern Network." Kalen stepped forward. "That can't be. We lost those towers before the last kingdoms were founded." The messenger nodded. "So we believed." He looked directly at the keeper. The signal came from a place believed destroyed thousands of years ago. Silence settled over the chamber. No one moved. No one dared speak. The keeper slowly closed the journal resting before him. The worn leather cover fell shut with a quiet sound that seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. His ancient eyes lifted to meet those of the messenger. Hope, fear, wonder, all three flickered within them. Then he spoke a single sentence. Then someone survived. They appeared in the heavens above. Countless brass rings rotated silently through the air, each engraved with symbols belonging to civilizations long forgotten. At the room's center floated a magnificent crystal globe, nearly 30 feet across. It hung unsupported above a circular platform of white stone. The world, or at least, the world as the Watchers believed it to be. Mountains rose from its surface in miniature. Rivers shimmered like threads of silver. Storms drifted slowly across tiny oceans. Thousands of pinpoints of light flickered within the globe. Golden lights, blue lights, white lights, each marked something precious. Ancient heartstones, forgotten beacon towers, fragments of the old roads. Most remained dark. Their time had ended long ago. The storyteller stepped closer, mesmerized. It remembers everything. It remembers what survives, the keeper answered quietly. Then, a single light burst into brilliant life. Not beneath the crown of ash. Not within the borders of any surviving kingdom. Far to the west, beyond the endless ocean, every eye turned toward it. The crystal globe trembled. Its surface rippled like still water disturbed by a falling stone. Then, the oceans themselves began to move. Coastlines shifted. Currents redrew themselves. Clouds rolled away. Slowly, impossibly, land emerged where every chart claimed there was only open sea. A continent, flushed, ancient, hidden. The storyteller felt his breath catch. That can't exist. Around him, whispers spread through the chamber. It must be broken. The observatory has slept too long. Our maps are complete. It contradicts every record. No ship has ever returned from that sea. The voices grew louder. Doubt battled disbelief, until the keeper slowly approached the floating globe. Silence followed him. He studied the newly revealed continent for what felt like an eternity. Then he gently rested his hand upon the crystal. His reflection shimmered across its surface. It isn't a new continent. His voice carried effortlessly through the vast chamber. It was hidden. No one answered. No one could. Lyra stepped forward, her gaze fixed upon the western lands. There are stories, she said quietly, so old that even most watchers dismiss them. The storyteller looked toward her. What stories? She drew a slow breath. At the end of the Great War, some cities chose not to rebuild. They chose to disappear. She pointed toward the newly revealed continent. The greatest Hearthstone mages joined their strength and created the Veil of Horizons. The Veil, the storyteller asked, a barrier unlike any ever forged. Her voice became distant, as though reciting words she had learned centuries before. It bends the sea. It twists the stars. It clouds memory itself. Sailors who unknowingly approach it lose all sense of direction. Their compasses spin. The constellations change. Storms rise from clear skies. And no matter how determined they are, the currents always carry them home. Kalen folded his arms. The world forgot them because it was meant to. The storyteller stared at the globe. Every map he had ever seen. Every kingdom. Every tale of exploration. All incomplete. The world was larger. Far larger. And somewhere beyond the horizon, an entire civilization had survived in silence for 10,000 years. The Council of Watchers gathered before the observatory. The room had become heavy with possibility. Some argued caution, if they wished to remain hidden. We should honor that choice. Others feared what might await beyond the veil. If they survived the Great War, what have they become? Friend, enemy. The keeper listened without interruption. Only when every voice had fallen silent did he finally speak. We will not march to them with soldiers. His eyes settled upon the storyteller. History has shed enough blood. He turned toward Lyra. You know the forgotten paths. She nodded. Then, to Kalen. You will protect them. The veteran inclined his head. A gray-haired scholar stepped forward from among the gathered watchers. Master Elian, keeper of Heartstone lore. His robes shimmered with woven threads of crystal. I will decipher whatever survives. Finally, an elderly woman emerged from the edge of the chamber. Unlike the others, she carried no weapon. Only an ancient brass astrolabe hanging from her belt. Silver threaded through her dark hair, though her eyes burned with remarkable clarity. The keeper smiled faintly. Navigator Seraphine. She bowed. There are stars beyond the veil that no modern sailor has ever seen. The storyteller looked around the gathering. No army, no Vanus, no conquest, only 5 souls entrusted with the future. Our purpose, the keeper said, is not to claim forgotten lands. It is to discover them. Preparations began before sunset. Maps older than kingdoms were unsealed. Ancient vessels hidden beneath the sanctuary's harbor were inspected for the first time in centuries. Heartstones, long thought dormant, began awakening one after another. Hope had returned. Then, the observatory chimed again. Not once, twice. Every crystal within the chamber flared crimson-white. The western beacon still burned brightly. But another light had appeared. It was smaller, brighter, moving. The storyteller frowned. That's impossible. Kalen leaned closer to the globe. It's traveling. The light advanced steadily across the ocean, straight toward the eastern kingdoms, straight toward the sanctuary. The scholar shook his head. No beacon can move. The keeper's face grew solemn. He watched the light in silence before speaking. That isn't a beacon. Another pulse of light crossed the globe. It is carrying one. A chill settled over the room. Someone, somewhere beyond the veil, already knew they had been found. Far beyond every chart ever drawn. Far beyond every shipping lane known to the kingdoms of men. A lone vessel sailed through an endless ocean wrapped in silver mist. Its hull cut silently through waters untouched by foreign sails for 10,000 years. Its towering white sails billowed without wind. Upon them was stitched an emblem no living historian would recognize. A white phoenix, its wings outstretched in eternal flight. 7 brilliant stars encircled it like a heavenly crown. At the bow stood a solitary figure wrapped in a midnight blue cloak. The hood concealed every feature. Only one gloved hand rested upon a crystal lantern suspended from an ancient staff. Within the lantern burned a heartstone unlike any seen in the eastern kingdoms. Its light answered another light far beyond the horizon. As the vessel crossed an invisible boundary upon the sea, the ocean itself awakened. Far beneath the waves, massive circles of forgotten runes blazed to life. Ancient wards, silent since the final days of the Great War, stirred from their endless vigil. The veil of horizons had been crossed. For the first time in 10,000 years, 2 forgotten civilizations were no longer alone. They were sailing toward one another. And somewhere, beneath the shattered lands of the Crown of Ash, the Hollow King smiled within the darkness, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along.